Hello. So, firstly, I just want to talk about the author of the book Christ Returns Speaks His Truth, which is the recorder. In letter 9, Christ says, "My only means of reaching you has been through the medium of a human being, sensitive, clairaudient, obedient, and dedicated to God, born to be the channel through whom I could watch the tumult of her active, eventful life and world events. The process of partial overshadowing began before her birth, continued in her youth and life, beginning with the thorough deprogramming of her mind and full cleansing of old concepts. My recorder has been deliberately subjected to every human experience, bearing witness to the struggles and sorrow involved in modern living. With my instruction, she has climbed out of her many diverse holes of distress, culminating in the death of her ego and mental emotional bondage to materialism. She is learning how to move into the consciousness frequencies of universal love, and has had personal experience of the reality of universal consciousness. So has she been sufficiently cleansed to receive ever more clearly my teachings to distribute throughout the world. Under my influence, she has withdrawn from social life into seclusion and aloneness, and has ultimately become dependent on me for her daily will to live, and I work through her total minute-by-minute readiness to receive my words, whenever cosmic and her personal consciousness energies enable her to hear and receive me. I rely on her honesty and dedication to wait to hear me accurately, and I make it clear when it is I who speak. Until I speak, she is unable to write." So actually, Recorder's work began before her birth. It was a pre-birth agreement to do this role, this being her role, her service to humanity, to bring forth the Christ material. She also says that in the introduction, the work of preparing me to become Christ's recorder began 40 years ago, when, as a committed Christian, encountering grievous difficulties as a farmer and asking Christ for help, an unexpected, forceful answer caused me to re-examine and discard all religious dogma. Enlightenment followed and clearly led in new directions of work and study. I founded a business dealing with people which flourished. For 7 years I enjoyed success and much happiness. To grow in spiritual understanding, I then went through diverse, very traumatic human experiences, and after much suffering, painfully and gainfully learnt their lessons, then transcended them spiritually. One evening, in response to prayer for guidance, the presence of Christ became a reality. "You gave me irrefutable proof of his identity." He spoke to me for an hour, sending strong waves of cosmic love through my body, and gave me a brief description of what I was to be taught and eventually achieve. A fortnight later, he led me through a transcendent experience of conscious union with God. I became a healer and instrumental in some instantaneous healings. From 1966 to 1978, at important points in my life, in response to questioning, Christ instructed me in spiritual scientific principles, now explained by Christ in his letters. In 1975, I experienced a night of visions describing events between 1983 and 1994, all of which came true. I was again told there would be work for me to do in the future. She says she's been living an increasingly solitary life, and she went through a very clear refining process. And then when she was perfectly empty of self, malleable and receptive, the voice began its dictation and the letters began to take shape. These letters are entirely the work of Christ. And she says, I am merely the recorder, nothing more. And the only other info about the recorder is, she says, during the writing of the letters, I was clearly told to leave myself out of the picture, that Christ's letters must stand entirely on their own. People must decide for themselves whether the letters rang true or whether people felt they were fake. I had written down what I had received. I would try to get them out for public scrutiny, and whatever happened after that was strictly between the reader of the letters and Christ consciousness. Christ promised in the letters that they would form a link between the reader's mind and Christ's mind, and help would be given in understanding the deep meaning hidden behind the words. Many people have reported experiencing that contact. Many people have been aware of an inflow of insight. Therefore, just as a secretary's name is unimportant in a business transaction, so is my name and my identity unimportant. What is truly important is whether the reader can feel this is the authentic Christ who has risen in spiritual consciousness to the very portals of the equilibrium, whilst still retaining individuality in order to remain in contact with the world of individuality. Then she goes on to explain the formatting of the letters. I would like to explain that as Christ impressed my mind with words or pictures, which made it necessary for me to build up what I saw in words, I also felt the emotions, to a certain degree, that Christ felt when going through the events he is describing at this time. By dropping back into the vibrations of that time, Christ entered into those times and relayed them through my mind. There was no way that the letters could have been written in plain print or just using italics. So often, when a new wonderful insight was put through my mind, I wondered, how can I get this across? You will know what I mean as you read the letters. And that is why some parts are given in bold and some are given in capitals to emphasize what is being said. So, recorder says 40 years ago, and we don't know from when that was, but let's just say that maybe from when the book was published, 2018. That would take us back to 1978. Perhaps around that time, Recorder was a farmer. And if she was already an adult then, she must have been born in the 1950s or 60s, taking her to be about 70 or 80 now. So basically it was a lifetime's work for her to bring us this material. She's remained anonymous and she may not be with us anymore. Some people have speculated that she was English. I don't believe so. I'll explain that in a later video as we go through the book. But anyway, Recorder did us a great service, and I would like to send loving thanks to Recorder for bringing us this phenomenal material. God bless you, Recorder.